Sometimes you hear about creatures from our planet's past that just sound impossible. Well, today we're talking about one of those, a true giant that time basically forgot, the Megatherium.
All right, I want you to try something. Picture a sloth, the chill, slow-moving tree hugger we all know and love. Now, blow it up. Scale that thing up to the size of a modern-day elephant. Sounds like something straight out of Hollywood, right? But believe me, this was very, very real.
So to really get your head around the sheer scale we're talking about, just look at this. A modern sloth, it's about the size of a big house cat. You and me, we're around 6 feet tall, give or take. But the Megatherium? Wow, it was in a completely different ballpark. We're talking elephant-sized. This wasn't just a big sloth. This thing was an absolute titan.
Okay, so let's get a formal introduction to this incredible animal. Its name, Megatherium, comes from Greek and it translates pretty much perfectly to great beast. And honestly, I can't think of a better name for one of the largest land mammals that ever walked the earth.
And just look at this timeline. It really shows you how long this giant was around. The Megatherium first shows up about 5 million years ago. For millennia, it just dominated the landscape in the Americas. And then, poof, around 10,000 years ago, which is like the blink of an eye in geologic time, it just vanishes.
All right, let's really try and size up this prehistoric titan. It's one thing to say elephant-sized, but what does that actually feel like? What does that mean in terms of pure raw power?
Well, for starters, we're talking about 4 tons. That's nearly 9,000 pounds. Can you just imagine the ground shaking when this thing walked past? This was no lightweight. This was a true heavyweight champion of the ancient world.
And it wasn't just a dense block of an animal. It was huge all around. From its head all the way to the tip of its tail, a Megatherium could stretch out to 6 meters. That's about 20 feet long. To put that in perspective, that's longer than a lot of cars on the road today.
Its skeleton really tells a story, and that story is all about power. We're talking massive leg bones, a super wide pelvis, and this thick, muscular tail. Its whole body was built for strength, for stability. This animal was not a runner. No, it was designed to be an absolute, immovable force of nature.
So, you gotta wonder, how did a creature this ridiculously big actually make a living? What was a day in the life like for a giant sloth? Let's dig into how it didn't just survive, but actually thrived in its world. This is just incredible. This shows its totally unique way of getting food. See, it couldn't climb trees like its tiny modern cousins. No way. Instead, it would heave itself up onto its powerful back legs, use that massive tail as a third point of balance, kind of like a tripod, and then it would use these enormous 12-inch claws to hook onto high branches and just rip them down to eat the leaves. It was basically a walking, tree-wrecking, salad-eating machine.
So its whole body was just this arsenal of amazing adaptations. That tripod stance gave it unbelievable reach. Those huge claws, they weren't for climbing, they were specialized dinner tools. And get this, it even had these little bony plates, called osteoderms, actually embedded in its skin. It was like built-in body armor, probably to protect it from predators like saber-toothed cats. Pretty cool, huh?
So the Megatherium is part of this club of giant animals that scientists call megafauna. It's just the official term for the supersized creatures of a particular time and place. So when you think of woolly mammoths, saber-toothed cats, you've got to add the giant ground sloth right there with them. They were the superstars of the Ice Age.
But here's the thing. After millions of years of being on top, this great beast just disappeared. How? Why? And that brings us to one of prehistory's biggest mysteries. It's a real prehistoric cold case.
Okay, so just like in any cold case, you gotta line up the suspects. And for the Megatherium's extinction, we've got 2 main ones. In one corner, you have massive, rapid climate change as the last ice age ended. And in the other corner, a brand new, incredibly smart predator on the scene, early humans.
Now, the case for climate change is pretty compelling. As the glaciers melted, the whole world warmed up, and it happened fast. The forests and grasslands that the Megatherium called home and ate for dinner, they changed like crazy. And for a huge animal that was so specialized, that kind of rapid shift in your food supply, yeah, that could have been absolutely devastating.
But then you look at the case against humans, and it's also really strong. The timeline of when the Megatherium started to disappear, it lines up almost perfectly with when the first humans arrived in the Americas.
And here's the smoking gun. Paleontologists have actually found megatherium bones with clear cut marks on them, marks that could only be made by human tools. This wasn't an isolated event either. It was part of a much bigger extinction pattern.
So, what's the verdict? Well, the truth is we probably don't have just one single culprit. Most scientists these days think it wasn't an either-or situation, but a deadly 1-2 punch. A rapidly changing climate put the giant sloth populations under a ton of stress, and then the added pressure from human hunting was likely what pushed them right over the edge. But the scientific debate? Oh yeah, that's still going on.
So even though the megatherium itself is long gone, it left behind these echoes. And these echoes completely changed how we understand our own world. Let's take a look at the incredible legacy it left behind.
Can you just imagine the year is 1788? You're in Argentina, and you unearth this skeleton, the first one ever found. I mean, the shock must have been incredible. Nobody had ever seen anything like it. This single discovery sent massive shockwaves through the scientific world, forcing everyone to deal with a creature that just didn't fit into any known box.
And this might be its single most important contribution to science. See, back then, the whole idea that a species could just die out, completely vanish forever, that wasn't really a thing people accepted. But by studying these bizarre bones, the famous naturalist George Cuvier helped prove that extinction was real. It was a natural process, and that idea completely revolutionized biology.
So when we ask, what's the megatherium's legacy, it's so much more than just a pile of cool-looking bones. It's a powerful symbol of this lost world that was filled with giants. It's a key piece of the puzzle that helped us finally understand extinction. And really, it's just this profound reminder that the very ground we walk on was once home to creatures that are beyond our wildest dreams.
So the story of the great beast, its rise, its incredible reign, and its mysterious fall, it's all written there in its fossilized bones. It's a complete story with a beginning, a middle, and an end. And it kind of leaves us with a pretty big question to think about, doesn't it? What story will the future find written in our legacy?